What's going on, exploders? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about box mags. We all know that M4 is king of airsoft, but if you step out of the realm of that, you might wander into the LMG world, and that's when things get weird. Primarily the box mag. Now usually the gun itself is pretty well built. It's got a lot of room inside for a gearbox, so things are beefy and not everything's crammed into a small body. The hop-up tends to be pretty good as well, but all the problems tend to funnel at the box mag, literally. Typically these things are electronic. They have a motor in there and a feeding mechanism. It ties into the gun, like on this gun. It plugs in, it runs off the same battery the gun does. Sometimes it's a push button, but for some reason the manufacturers decided to use just about the cheapest materials for this. Any kind of dirt or sand or just time and wear seems to get in the way of stuff. And that's exactly what happened to me here. I was prepping this gun for a mil-sim a couple weeks out, so I went to go test all the elements, and I get to the box mag, fill it up with BBs, it makes a bunch of clicky clacky noises, nothing feeds. Took it apart, took out the motor that drives everything, cleaned it, put it back together, fed for 5 seconds, got jammed again. I was like, okay, I'm done with this. If it doesn't work here in a perfect environment, out there in the field with dirt, with running, jumping, bumping, it's just gonna completely destroy itself. So I'm thinking, okay, let's just put a high cap in there. The high cap mechanism has been around forever, it works, and all I need to do is force BBs into the gun. It's very similar to what M4 does, is just over a tube instead of directly. But then I'm thinking, that's a little tough to get to that wheel with this box mag. It has a little hole at the bottom. So I'm thinking, let's do a flash mag. I've used them a couple times, they're great. You open up the bottom plate of them, pull them a few times, and you get a couple hundred BBs before you have to pull it again. So the first thing I did was take this existing box mag apart, and I wanted to salvage as many parts as possible. So I took out all the guts, took out all the screws, got it kind of down to its basics. And what I was able to reuse is this cap that opens up to load the BBs from the top. I also used some of the screws when assembling my 3D printed holder for the flash mag as well. And of course the tube, you need that because you got to get BBs from the box to the gun. And the sleeve we will use as well, as everything we print, we'll make sure it fits in here. Actually, I'm using the exact same dimensions of the existing box mag just for similarity's sake and for the more likely chance that everything actually comes back together and works. To get the ball rolling, I disassembled the existing M4 mag. All it requires is I'm a little set screw in the front, and then the two halves slide apart. In there you can see it's pretty hollow. All you have is the feed tube for the BBs and some structure. At the bottom, that's where all the magic happens. There's a sets of gears that revolve and lock into place, and there's this wind-up spring that keeps tension that it can release at a later time. So when you pull that wire from the bottom, you're tensioning up that spring that then can collect BBs, spin them up, and you don't have to do it every time you need BBs. There's like a reserve energy that's sitting there. So the next plan is to print a container to hold this M4 high cap magazine. And that's what I did. I measured it out, 3D modeled it. So I had just the part I needed to hang on to, which is right around the center. And then I designed a box around it, that two halves that snap together to sandwich the wind-up mechanism in between. And then those halves are the dimensions of the existing box mag, so they can drop back into the sleeve. Due to my printer's limitations, I had to do it in 3 parts. It could easily be done in 2 parts. So when I was finally able to print everything up, surprisingly everything went together on the first try. Usually it takes a couple before I get it right. But these print pieces were so huge and it took so long to print that I'm glad everything fit together on the first try. Next goal was to assemble the thing. This was, of course, not without its troubles. The main problem being is chopping off the tube that goes all the way to the top of the M4 mag. I don't need it going really anywhere past the part where the two halves clamp. And the lower it is, the better, because it gives the hose a little more flexibility. So it's not taking a hard 90-degree turn to come out of this hole here. So first thing, I tried cutting it with some PVC cutters, and that was a bad idea. The stuff that the high cap is made of is super weak. It starts breaking and kind of delaminating. So you need to be gentle with it. Then I tried a hacksaw, which worked okay, but again, it's a lot of motion back and forth, a lot of unnecessary stress. Next thing I went with was a hot wire cutter that is used to cut foam. Now, I know most of you guys don't have these tools, but I'm lucky enough to have a good collection of tools, and that went right through it. The only problem was it's hot, and as it cuts through it, it splits it, but at the same time it heals right back up behind it. So I cut through it, and it's like a magic trick. The thing's back together. So that's sort of the way I did it. I cut it a few times and then started chipping away as I went. The next thing is, once it's cut, you need to get the feed tube into the mag. And the mag path inside for the BBs is a square. Well, I'm trying to put a round, flexible spring essentially in there. So that's, again, a little bit of a problem. I tried drilling it out, it started splitting the mag, and it feels like it's just going to break. Then I took a soldering iron, and then I started kind of widening with the heated tip. That worked pretty well, but it's very uneven, and any kind of bumps could really screw you up. I did have a problem where some of it melted in the way where it got in the path of the BBs, and had to take the whole thing apart, find it, file it. So not a great solution there. What worked for me was taking a heat gun, taking the drill bit that's the right diameter for this tube, heating it up, and then slowly manually drilling out the opening. It took a little while, but it basically melts the opening around the drill bit, and it kind of excavates it at the same time. I clamped it together. What I actually did, since the thing melts so easy, is take the soldering iron and kind of close up the seams by remelting them together again. So it became one piece, and then when all that goes inside the 3D printed shell, further clamps it. There's a zip tie that runs around the shell that keeps the two halves together. And then the top cap comes over the top, and that again keeps it from splitting and finishes off the shape of the box mag. So with all that done, it's just a matter of dropping it in here, running the hose out through the exterior fabric pouch, and trying the thing. Now, one other mod I did that helps me operate this thing, the flash mag just has a little cone grip that works well when you open up the bottom of the M4 mag, because it's just hanging free there, so you can grab it and then you have good access. On this thing, it's a little tough because it's coming out through the box and through this pouch. You can grab it, but it's a little bit of work. So what I did was take one of my Enola Gay rings from the EG67 grenades and use the same metal wire they used to attach to the grenade to attach to the little pull tab. This way at the bottom, I have an easy hook that I could just slide my finger in. It's never going to recess into the box mag as it's bigger than the opening. A quick grab, a couple of pulls, and we're good to go. Now, to be blatantly honest with you guys, first time I put it together, the thing didn't feed and I was not having a great time. So I had to tear it apart, and what was happening was not even the fault of the mechanism. It's something with the tube where if the box mag hangs a little low, like if you don't tighten the second strap, and this is probably just specific to this gun, but something to keep in mind, if it sags a little bit, it puts a weird kink in the feed tube, and the BBs just can't get through. It's the winding mechanism, I guess maybe it's not as strong as the mechanical one. So it needs a really clear path to the gun, so there's no resistance in it. But once you get that figured out, and I did that by actually moving up the hole a little bit on the interior 3D printed piece here, and then really tightening the strap here so it keeps the box mag upright, and it's a nice clean shot from box mag to the gun itself. Now with that, it was feeding great. A few pulls of the string will get me about 200, 300 shots maybe. I didn't really measure, but I would shoot until I kind of got tired of shooting, and then at that point it would run out. So what's great about this is if I'm out in the field and I have this setup as is, I could wind it up and I'm ready to go. I don't have to, it reduces the amount of noise you make when you go to fire, because typically when you pull the trigger, the battery starts winding the box mag, and at the same time it starts operating the gearbox, so you're making like twice as much noise, which for me I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but if you're trying to be stealthy, it is kind of a nice feature as well. So I'll be testing this out in the field real soon, and I'll let you know, but for now enjoy the footage of me shooting in my backyard. It ran great, and this gun is pretty awesome. So stay tuned, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.